55% people surveyed backed autocratic rule by a strong leader unfettered by legislatures or courts. 53% supported military rule, and 65% found technocracy, which is a government run by unelected experts, to be a good idea. So essentially, over half of the population surveyed in most cases think that we shouldn't be a democracy. Where does this come from? Where does this feeling come from?
It comes from the instinct that all of us have when the state fails. That we live in a part of the world where the majority of people are poor. Where the girl who taps on your car's window and asks for money, 10 years old, can't write, can't read, will die illiterate and poor. There is no scope of a transition into change that will happen in one's lifetime.
I want to start this episode with a quote from the Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant. He said this in 2020. In India, we are too much of a democracy, so we keep supporting everybody. For the first time in India, a government has thought big in terms of size and scale and said we want to produce global champions. Nobody had the political will and the courage to say that we want to support 5 companies who want to be global champions. Everyone used to say, I want to support everyone in India. I want to get votes from everyone. Tough reforms are very difficult in the Indian context. We have too much democracy. You need political will to carry out these reforms, and many more reforms still need to be done. So, according to Amitabh Kant, India has too much democracy. This is a phrase you must have heard as well. Your neighborhood, friendly neighborhood WhatsApp uncle must be screaming, Arey, we have too much democracy. We need a dictator every time they are stuck in traffic. So, I thought it's worth asking, what does this even mean? What does too much democracy mean? Where does this feeling come from? Are we an authority loving country at the end of the day? And is democracy holding us back? Is it holding our country back? Is it not letting us develop? What does this phrase really mean? And to tell us how it's not so simple, I have with me Aakar Patel, author, activist, and just generally fun Twitter person. Hello, Aakar, how are you doing?
Meghnad Ami, hello, good morning, good evening.
Aakar, I am happy to report that you are my first video after I have crossed 100K on this channel.
Absolutely delighted. I did not know till I joined this show a few months ago what the efficacy of this format was. And it's only recently, after I've been following the mayoral race in New York, have I realized that in many democracies, this is the format which has taken over from mainstream media in terms of both how to communicate news and the analysis and how to bring in viewers and readers. So I'm glad you're doing this, and I'm very happy that you've crossed 100,000. Well done.
Yes, thank you. And we have spoken a while ago, and back then also we had just meta discussions about where we are as a country, what we are doing, where is Modi. And because I had just read your book, which is Price of the Modi Years, this is one of my books which I just keep here because I keep referring to it again and again. I just want to start even with a little more basic thought, right? What, according to you, is a democracy in a very real sense?
So I think that the answer to that lies in what the intent of states is. What do states intend to do in the modern era? The fact is that countries that we consider to be not democracies also refer to themselves as being one. If you, who are we? So we say this is the Republic of India.
Yeah.
But the Islamic Republic of Iran also refers to itself as a republic. The People's Republic of China also refers to itself as a republic. What is a republic? Where power, the ultimate authority, flows from the people. The USSR, the R is republic. So they also considered themselves to be as democratic as responsible to the view and will of the people as we might consider ourselves to be, or the USA considers itself to be. So the intent of state is always to say that, oh, we have ultimate power residing with the people. This has broadly two meanings. One is, how do you determine who gets to be in charge and what is to be the basis of law? These are the two questions that modern states have grappled with. The response that many countries have when they claim to be democracies is that the first part, who gets to be in charge, is determined directly by the people. Whether you have a vote for a president, as you do in the United States, or for a member of parliament, as you do in the UK and you do here in India. The second question is tougher to resolve. What is to be the basis of law? The basis of law is ultimately what determines whether a state is a democracy or not. It's not so much how who gets to be in charge is decided. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, people vote. It's not as if the people in charge are not directly elected by the people, but there is a filter on who is a good 12er Shia Muslim, and then there'll be a council that determines whether the person is good enough to stand for elections. Something similar is there in Pakistani law. The second problem is harder to resolve because it requires society to be democratic. That you should be open in terms of accepting law that adheres to your constitution, but you might not personally like. For instance, should women be allowed to hold office? Should women be allowed to vote is a question that was resolved only in the last 100 years. The United States in the 1960s had problems with the African American population voting. Even today, if you look at the news from this week, there is a story on what is called gerrymandering, that they're trying to redistrict parts of Texas so that Republicans can get a bigger share of the seats in the House. Is that democratic? I would say no. Does it fall within the democratic process? Yes. So to my mind, the second bit, which is that the basis of law should be a set of principles that is open, liberal, and that moves forward, is what qualifies societies as being democratic. And so that I think...
In the case of India, right, if you're saying the basis of law, right, what is it that is our basis of law then, which makes us a democracy? So or does not?
Sure. So our basis of law is the constitution.
Yes.
India said, so to just separate this from two states, let's say the Nepali state pre-2008 said that the basis of law would be Hindu smritis, and so that the ruler, executive power would flow directly from a Kshatriya king, which was the Kshetri dynasty, and that ended in 2008. In Iran, the basis of law will be 12er Shiism, that whatever constitutes the jurisprudence of the 12er Shia ayatollahs, the clerics, that would be the basis of law. India said that we are a republic where power rests with the people, and that the constitution tells us, it gives us direction in terms of what law should be. The role of the Supreme Court, for those ignorants who don't know this, is to assess the most important role of the Supreme Court of India is to determine which laws fall foul of this principle, which laws are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court was not an institution to hear bail. The Supreme Court it has become that because of the failure of the justice system, generally speaking. But what laws have been written up that run counter to the principles of the Constitution of India? That's the role of the Supreme Court. We determined, and this was given greater clarity in the 70s, that this would be a republic that is socialist and that is secular. The democratic principle was written into it deeply from the start. What does socialist mean? That we will not be an unequal society. We will not be an unequal society on the basis of caste and community and on the basis of wealth. And we will be secular in the sense that the principles of law will not be based on religion.
Correct.
So those were the things that we said would make us democratic, and the leaning of this would be on the constitution.
And the third thing which you mentioned, which is like we are a secular republic, that wasn't initially technically a part of our constitution, was added later, but in a very real sense, it was a part of our constitution because of other articles in the law books. But like one thing I've been reading about, so I started reading India After Gandhi again, right? And I was reading that chapter on partition and how Jinnah and Nehru and just general disagreements that were there and how the princely states came to become a part of India, all those things. Would you say that that is what determined our basis of law, right? Essentially, the existence of a Pakistan which has basis of law in a religion versus us, which does not.
So I would say that the principal foundation of the constitution comes from the from two things. One is Ambedkar's learning. He's the only person of that generation of prominence who studies in the United States. The others all come out of a leftist education in the United Kingdom. If you look at Jinnah, if you look at Gandhi, Patel, all of them.
The barristers.
Indeed. So they brought with them a certain liberalism, which the Americans, with their foundational learning on hard, concrete constitutionalism, did not have. But both these sides accepted that the only way in which you could have a modern state would be to divorce it from from the faiths and to rest it on the principles that were universal, which was equality, secularism. As you said rightly, the word secularism was not used in the but it needed have been, because every article of the constitution is shot through with the principle that we should divorce this from religion. Indeed, it could be argued that some of the earlier fundamental rights, 14, 15, 16, 17, they skewer doctrinal faith. They address the problems of the faith in terms of the access to wells and so on, and say this cannot be allowed, which is not there in most modern constitutions, but here it was required. That's how it was felt.
To prevent caste discrimination and social discrimination.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Untouchability being removed as a principle in the constitution is not to be found in most modern constitutions.
Right.
So I would say that the foundation was that of modern thinking, which came out of the various educations that they brought with them. Pakistan and the role it chose and the direction it went in came in much later. If we look at the principles on which the Congress party functioned in the 20s and 30s, and the way in which Ambedkar indeed began to draft some of the laws, we don't find that this is a response to majoritarianism. It comes out of a positive impulse that we will have a country that is modern, and a constitution that 100 or 200 or 500 years later will still be what it is today.
Correct. So, but so as you said, I think at one point which you said that I feel like democracy has to be in everybody's nature for a country to become democratic. As in, like, what I've been thinking about lately was that I've been trying to observe around me, are the spaces around me democratic or not? Like, is my workplace, is my environment, is my society, is it democratic or not? And most of the time I come with the answer, it is not. Because there is always some wannabe authoritarian figure sitting on top, which is trying to direct everyone's thoughts and trying to tell them what is right or wrong. And if you sort of blow it up into a larger scale, then it is not a democratic setup, is it? Do you think so as well?
I agree with you. I think my observations when I leave even inside my own flat, I think reflect yours.
Yeah.
And Ambedkar saw this. He said that we are entering a phase. This is when the constitution was to be enacted, 1950, where this country will have equality in terms of government, one man, one vote, and so on. One person, one vote, as we say these days. But it does not have equality in society. And to him, that was the larger problem. I would agree with him that is the larger problem. is that problem divorced from the problem of state? Can we actually repair society? Can we make it better without the instruments of state? I would say no. And
Oh,
I think
okay.
that you require a certain set of principles that guide you. And this is
Sure, but
especially,
then when you say that, is it the job of the state to sort of fix it? I mean, I'm looking at it from a very individualistic perspective. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like civic education has a lot to do with it as well. But do you think the state can impose this? Impose in the sense you can't, right? Because then that will be anti-democratic as well.
it imposes it in one sense, in the sense of law for, say, caste. That
Okay.
that untouchability is criminalized. That you've got a society where large sections of it want to practice it. That when you have a flat in Bombay, you have separate utensils for your servants, and that is essentially not because of the fact that you think they're dirty, because they are the ones who make the food you eat. It's because you want that separation. It will not even occur to most of us that this comes out of caste, but it does. And the state says, okay, we think that this is a problem in society. We will actually try and correct it through law. Similarly, I think that the issue of, let's say, reservations. This is not something that society, generally speaking, those parts of society that are powerful would want as a practice in society, that we will be inclusive, that we will have a company of, say, I live in Bangalore. We've got 4 companies here which employ a total of, I think, about 10 or 12 lakh people in the software business. How many of these people come from communities that have been deprived of education, that don't have the opportunities that you and I have had? And I would say very few. So the state says, okay, let's try and fix this through, at least in the government jobs, through law. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is also to be corrected through law, which is, let's say, mob violence. I don't like the idea that people eat a certain kind of meat. And I don't really know what the law says on this. And to be fair to me, the law is very confusing. There is
Yes.
nobody in India who actually fully understands what the cattle slaughter laws are throughout the country. They're so complicated. In some states, it's fully banned. In some states, it's sort of half banned. But whatever the case might be in my state, I don't agree with it. I want to stop it. I see it on the street. I step in and I turn violent. The state says that this is not to be allowed. That the entire edifice of modern government rests on a principle, which is that monopoly over violence lies with the state. And if the citizen or the individual breaks it, that is a crime. That is why all violent forms of crime are prosecuted by the state, not by the victim or the survivor.
Correct.
Because the state says my right to the monopoly over violence has been taken away because you murdered somebody.
So it's like always government of India versus XYZ, or government of Karnataka versus XYZ.
Whereas if I were to give you a check and that check were to bounce, and then that would be like a dispute between you and I, and that would not involve the government.
Right.
Whereas if I were to harm you or you were to kill me, the state would step in and say that this is a transgression of its rights rather than just the rights of Meghnad and the rights of Aakar.
So the state is the only one that has the right to take away your rights, technically.
Yes. And I think that this is one reason why in poorer parts of the world like India, control of the state becomes so important. Because one aspect of tribalism that we see around us in India and in South Asia, generally speaking, is how can I remove the other person's rights?
Yes.
How can I stop them from eating what they want, from voting, from being called citizens, from praying where they want, and so on?
So when you're... So I think this line of argument, which is only the state has the right to take away rights, when you have like a dominant group of people or a mob, as we call it, right? It can be like a religion-based mob, it can be a language-based mob, anything. Is it that they can ask the state to do the right thing, or they can just use the state's machinery to, get their way? Because I mean, that is where I feel like it becomes a little undemocratic, isn't it? But also, if you think about it the other way, that the mob is right in a democracy. So how do you deal with those two things?
So the way it is justified is that, we voted for this, and therefore it should be implemented in full. And so you could look at the citizenship laws that India passed in 2019, and the argument would go back to that first thing that we discussed. Is a democracy one where you determine who gets to be in charge, or is a democracy one where the laws come out of a certain set of values? The people who support the CAA and the NRC would lean on the former.
Okay.
That a democracy is one where the people who are voted in have the authority to do what they want. The people who oppose CAA and the NRC say, no, it doesn't matter who's in charge. All laws need to follow a certain principle, which is constitutional.
Right.
So this would be the attention, that the people who would want what you and I would call a mob to act would say the mob is acting because of the fact that the state wants to go in a particular direction, which is to deprive a large number of people of citizenship. And that
Right.
is valid because it is democratic.
But okay, I'll come back to that a little bit. But I wanted to run a few figures past you. So there is this survey that was done by Pew Research Center in February 2024. It said a few very interesting things. It said that 55% people surveyed backed autocratic rule by a strong leader, unfettered by legislatures or courts. 53% supported military rule, and 65% found technocracy, which is a government run by unelected experts, to be a good idea. So essentially, over half of the population surveyed in most cases think that we shouldn't be a democracy. So I find this very funny, which is like, oh, we are so proud about India as a democracy where we can vote and there is this system where we get to choose our leader, etc. But then there is this feeling that a lot of people seem to have, that the people we elect are worthless and therefore we need someone who just takes power for themselves and does what they think is right. Where does this come from? Where does this feeling come from?
It comes from the instinct that all of us have when the state fails, that we live in a part of the world where the majority of people are poor, where the girl who taps on your car's window and asks for money, 10 years old, can't write, can't read, will die illiterate and poor. There is no scope of a transition into change that will happen in one's lifetime. And what happens in these places is that that level of frustration leads you to think of the government as being essentially the problem, and the fix being somebody who can do things firmly. I don't think of ourselves as being particularly different either from Pakistan or from Bangladesh. This precise instinct can be found in Pakistan, where it became easier for the state to regress into militarism because it did not have a foundational party like we did. And Pakistan keeps seesawing between wanting to have a strong hand at the union level, which would be the army, and then a couple of years later feeling that this is wrong and wanting to be democratic. So support for Imran Khan or Nawaz Sharif or Pervez Musharraf, Ayub Khan was the first one. It would seesaw, but it would always be based on the fact that solutions are easily to be found in authoritarianism, and then the realization 2 years down the line that that's not the case. And there's the same story is played out in Bangladesh. That if the fault is thought to be that of the system, you rely on the military, which is not able to get you out of the troubles, and then you have to 2-3-4 years down the line. I'm told that Bangladesh will go into elections next year. I hope that is the case. 2-3-4 years down the line, you find that maybe the other form was better. What shouldn't change, I think, to my mind, is that second bit, the basis of law. As long as we are able to transfer more power to people, as long as people are able to benefit from liberal law, which means that they are able to function in a space where large numbers of people might not like the rights they have, but they still have them. That in the long run, that is what helps. I think who is in charge is, I think, the lesser part of democracy and the lesser part of the state.
So in India, so I think let's look at it like on the flip side also, what you said. There are I spoke about three forms, right? One is like a religious basis, maybe a government drawing from a religious sort of bent of mind like Pakistan does, or a military leadership, or a technocracy, right? What is it that has prevented India from going either way? Because I mean, even if you look at like someone like an Indira Gandhi, she is an authoritarian leader in the strictest sense of terms, at least for that period of time. Maybe Modi to a large extent, but none of them draw their power from either of these things, do they?
No, so I think we'll go back to what you said earlier again,
Hmm.
which is that though the word was only introduced in the 70s, the fact that constitution should be secular was part of the framing of law.
Hmm.
Pakistan didn't have that. So we become independent in 47. For 10 years, Pakistan is not able to draft a constitution. Various prime ministers come and go, Bengalis, one Gujarati as well, Punjabis, obviously. After 10 years, the army takes over and rules
Hmm.
for another 10 years because the foundation is not there. In India, the constitution is respected and followed by both sides, at least in the way that they speak of it. They might distort it in the sense that laws are drafted up or actions are taken as they were in 75, 77 by the Congress party, which violate the principle of the constitution. But the text was seen as sacred. When Mr. Modi approaches the constitution, he bows to it. And many of us regard him as being a sort of authoritarian figure. But even from that point of view, this set of principles and rules and laws is seen as sacrosanct. That helped. And that came about because of the fact that the Congress party had been around for a very long time. It's a 19th century party, that it had been in legislatures debating, arguing, voting for decades before 1947. And so it knew this was to be the way in which a modern state runs. Whereas Pakistan, Bangladesh came much later, but Pakistan did not have that opportunity because their freedom struggle only began 7 years before 1947,
Correct.
when you had the Lahore Declaration, and then that was to be the train on which Pakistan rode. So that would be the difference, and I think that difference will stay. That we don't have an alternative. India, no alternative has been proposed to the Indian Constitution, including by the BJP.
That's true. That's true.
That this will be our democratic foundation is something that all parties accept and want. And even if we were to remove these two words, socialist and secular, from the constitution, I don't think that the laws that would emanate from it, from that curbed, curtailed, docked constitution, would be very different in nature from what we have.
Also because I mean, the very interesting point you bring up about how BJP doesn't have an alternative constitution. Like everybody says, like the Manusmriti is something they talk about to go back to, but it's not possible, is it?
It's not possible. So Nepal was a Hindu Rashtra till 2008. Only
Right.
two parts of the Hindu Rashtra applied to it. One was, as I told you, there was a Kshatriya king, hereditary Kshatriya king of the Kshetri dynasty, from whom all of the executive powers would flow. Secondly, in the court of this king would be a Brahmin, somebody called a Mool a Purohit. This Mool Purohit would advise the king. I think that's the word that's used in that constitution. But what is the advice for and so on, we don't know. Other than these two elements of the Smritis, nothing else came. And nothing else came because you cannot follow doctrine which says that women cannot be literate.
Yeah.
That Shudra should not be allowed to read, because that's the majority of your population. If you ask the peasantry to only do service, to only do farming, and you exclude very large numbers of people from society entirely, the Malaj would constitute 40% of a society totally. Dalits in India, 16%, Muslims 14%, Adivasis 8%. So you're practically removing 4/10 of society
Yeah.
from all law. It's not possible. And I think that even if they want to do it, Guruji Golwalkar, in his texts, in Bunch of Thoughts, tells us that the idea of the Indian nation is that of the idea of a society structured around caste. And the reason why Indian society should be worshipped is that this structure should be worshipped.
Okay.
The fact is that even the BJP, in its own constitution, does not refer to the works of Guruji. It refers to Gandhian socialism as the directional principle that the party will have. And the reason for that is the BJP is pragmatic. It knows that even if it wanted to be run by a bunch of Brahmins from Nagpur, this country cannot be, because the majority of people do not fall under the social stratification that somebody might want implemented, but makes no sense in the world of 2025 and made no sense in the world of 1947.
So even if the BJP can't really take us back to, let's say, a Manusmriti era, can it take it back to Indira Gandhi's emergency? This is a question that, a lot of people also like ponder about, which is...
It has. I'm saying, what is Indira Gandhi's emergency? So one, that there would be two bits to it.
Just one thing. Recently, like, someone had made an argument when they were like doing the whole they were celebrating the destruction of democracy. I don't know what the BJP was doing there, which is like they were remembering the emergency, the dark days where the constitution was destroyed, and it was called the Constitution Hatya Divas. That is what they were doing. They were going to hold a special parliament session also, which didn't happen. But one argument that I heard from the Congress for the first time, which I hadn't heard before, is that they started arguing that the emergency was technically legal. What Indira Gandhi did was legal. They were not defending the morality of it, but they were like, oh, it was legal.
Yeah, this is what Manishankar Iyer said in 95 or 96 for the first time, and then he was like attacked then because the Congress was just going into the polls after Narasimha Rao. Right. So he's got a history of saying things that people think are inopportune. But if we forget the word emergency and we look at what that period of 75-77 was that makes it so horrible, there are the following things. Suspension of fundamental rights.
Yes.
What does that mean? The Supreme Court was told by the Congress government that if the government wants, it can jail anybody, and that person doesn't have recourse to judicial intervention.
And they had arrested a bunch of people, like
mostly politicians. Politicians, the difference between 1975 and 2025 is that the people in jail are not mostly politicians. They are also politicians.
That's
true. From TMC, from the NCP, but they're also journalists, they're activists, and so on. So in that sense, not very different.
Right.
That suspension of fundamental rights is as prevalent today as it was then. The second was that you would not have elections for the period that the emergency. How is that different from what Kashmir is going through?
Yeah.
Why is that? In what sense will we tell the person from Srinagar or Baramulla that today we don't live in an emergency because we have elections and so on?
Even Manipur, if you
Manipur, there you go.
Yeah.
There's no fundamental difference between 75-77 except for the branding. I think the branding is much more powerful than it is in the post 2014 era.
Right.
But on the street, it's not very different.
And also, like, I feel like one of the suspension of rights that you mentioned, media crackdown was one more. The second was people blame Sanjay Gandhi for doing the whole Nasbandi movement or whatever.
Today, we don't need to crack down on the media, right? Because the media is willing to do what the government says in any case. So I'm saying that it was, I would say that the performance of the media was better in 75-77 under authoritarianism, constitutional authoritarianism than it is today.
And also, I would add another thing to this, impunity. Would you say there was like a level of impunity within Indira Gandhi and the Congress party back then? And I mean, we can compare it to today also, but what do you think about that?
I think that's not a political phenomenon, that's a cultural phenomenon.
Okay.
When you have power, you will use it and it doesn't matter. That Kapil Mishra, who who used to be, I think, a contractor with Amnesty. I should reveal this. I don't know how he was hired or who hired him for a few months. Can get away with saying the same things that people have been accused of and jailed 5, 6, 7 years for without a trial. And the reason is impunity. And that runs culturally through us. If you give people power, they will abuse it. If you tell people who carry guns, you have the authority to detain women, to take them where you want, to destroy a house, to kill, and you will not be prosecuted. They will misbehave. They will beat you up when you are a SpiceJet employee because that's what they've been taught to do. They've been given authority, absolute power over the population, and told specifically there will not be any kind of accountability for you. Parliament was told, Rajya Sabha, 1st of January 2018, a question was asked, of all of the FIRs that the Jammu and Kashmir police have filed against individuals of the armed forces for rape, murder, torture, kidnap, in how many cases has the union government, the MOD and the MHA, allowed sanction of prosecution in a civilian court by lifting immunity of what is called Section 7 under AFSPA? The answer was zero. Yeah, we don't care. This is one government telling another government. Government of Jammu and Kashmir is telling the union government, we found this is on the charge sheet. The FIR is filed, the police investigate the complaint, find evidence, file a charge sheet is sent to Delhi. Delhi says get lost. So that sort of fundamentally, if that is the basis on which the state operates, you will not find it different whether it is Indira Gandhi and her goons in charge or whether it is the set that rules us today.
I feel like we spoke about this last time as well. One of the reasons why I think we are, slipping on the democratic scale, if you want to call it that way, is destruction of institutions which are supposed to sort of make us a very democratic country in general. What Amitabh Kant said, that these institutions are probably the ones that are holding us back, and we have too much democracy as a result. What are your thoughts on that?
So there are two ways in which a state, as far as I can understand it, progress along the lines that Kant is talking about. One is that you have the state play a very large role and have the state guide the economy to becoming successful. The second is that you allow the state to empower certain people and certain companies because that is what the economy needs at that point in time. And institutions that block the state from doing that are the ones that are holding back democracy.
But then who decides? It's in the second thing that you said, who decides that this is what the economy needs?
So the government will decide this, and they will call certain people, as Kant does, global champions. That we will nurture a set of people who will be able to be the ones who are given rights and privileges which come in either in the form of licenses or in the form of making sure that the tenders are written so that only they qualify, or they are written.
This is fascinating, Aakar, because earlier, 10 years ago, you used to call this crony capitalism, and now this is global champions.
Well, there is an established model for this. So this is how, for instance, South Korea developed Samsung and Hyundai and the rest of them. The other problem is that in this kind of thinking is that we have defaulted to this kind of thinking. We have decided that that a state cannot actually determine industrial policy and succeed.
Okay.
The only unfortunate bit of this is that it has come for Kant and Modi at a time in the world's history where this has been comprehensively disproven. That China has said that we will tackle 2-3 things through state policy. Let's say climate change, the fact that all of the patents in automobiles are held by German and Japanese and Korean companies. And therefore, we will develop automation which tackles these two issues. We will look at motorization, which looks at neither the combustion engine nor and all the patents, and also looks at climate change. they have become the world's biggest manufacturer of EVs, the
EVs,
world's
yes.
biggest manufacturers of solar panels.
Right.
And
Like
this has come.
I've seen that crazy chart which Elon Musk keeps sharing about the power, the power
Generation.
generation going
Yeah,
exploding.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that does include not only coal and fossil fuels, but also, as you are
Renewable.
referring to, solar, wind, and also nuclear. So,
Hmm.
so they have disproven the idea that many people hold, including friends of mine, that the only way in which democracy can expand and to and make its population wealthier and pull them out of poverty is to get out of industrial policy and to have what is called, if not a laissez-faire, at least a kind of liberal economy where people are where the state's role is very limited.
I just wanted to clarify this point. It's interesting what you say. In a way, what China has done is our PSU model on steroids. Because the state is the one that is sort of ordering the entire population what they need to manufacture, what they need to make in order to become competitive globally.
It's exactly the PSU model. There's no change in India. The post PSU, the sort of Indian model, the
The
accommodated for
Navratna,
the.
as they called it. Navratna, like we had those. Huh?
Yes, but I'm saying that there was the fact that you also have large industrial companies and have had them from before 47. You know, the Birlas and so on. The first factory that the Birlas set up. This was the first time that the Marwadi Baniyas got into manufacturing, 1919. Before that, they were purely traders. But in Gujarat, you had companies, you know, Mafatlal and so on, that were there from the 19th century. So you had the PSUs that were set up by Nehru and slightly before Nehru. And you had the private sector. That's exactly what China has. That it doesn't have a monopoly of the state over sectors, but it does have a participation, and it has worked. China is the only country in the world outside of Europe and the United States that has developed a commercial airliner. There's no other. China has more, something like 75% of the world's shipbuilding capacity. Most of it resides in the state and not in the private sector. Most of the companies that the cars bit is really interesting because China's got both state-owned companies. I think Great Wall Motors and SAIC are two of them, and it's got BYD and so on, which are privately held. So there's a mix. It's exactly like it is in India, but with the difference that there is competent execution of state policy.
But how is this then? One of the arguments that, of course, goes against this is if the government gets into manufacturing, etc., innovation will be slowed. I don't see that happening in China. Actually, it's
No,
very opposite.
no.
Um, but how does this work then? So, for example, I'll just like take our example, right? I was just reading this story by Reporters Collective about Adani's coal extraction adventures, which is how they systematically sort of made the WCL die, the Coalfields Limited, which was supposed to be a PSU company extracting coal for ages, by making the argument that they are not doing a good job at it. And then now Adani comes over, he's taking over coal plants, he's taking over entire supply chains, etc. Would you say that someone like an Adani or an Ambani or any other industrialist coming into and creating a monopoly over resource extraction, they're doing it better, they're innovating more?
It doesn't matter because you can't tell. If you have monopolies on non-tradable sectors, how can you tell whether it's good, bad, or worse?
What does that mean?
If
Yeah.
Gautam Adani and Mukesh Ambani were offering products and services that were competing with products and services across the world, if they were producing a mobile phone that competed with Apple, if they were producing a car that competed with BYD or Ford, if they produced a Facebook alternative that dominated Western Europe, I would say, okay, then that seems to be working. If your entire market domain is India, if your monopoly is over the resources and the extraction of those resources within India, and that monopoly means that foreign companies are not allowed to compete not only within the sector that you're in, but also to export into India what it is that they're dealing with. Of course, there's no way of knowing whether it's good, bad, or different. The problem with the crony capitalism of India is that it is, unlike Hyundai and Samsung and the Japanese companies, non-tradable. The Japanese and the Korean chaebols, when they were set up as global champions, went and conquered the world. They went and took over industries across. When I was your age, the Hyundai had just come out with its first cars. 1995, I think 96. They were not very good, but the way the pace at which they improved meant that they got market share in the US and Europe. How many of our cars sell there? Very, very few. And the reason for that is that we do not have champions, big companies in sectors which are actually tradable. And two of these in particular are the Adani and the Ambani groups.
So, would you say that the global champions, as Mr. Kant has described, are essentially going through like this whole phase of authoritarian dominance, like crony capitalism, what we used to call it, now we call it development. But do you think that if our institutions were stronger democratically, if we were more democratic on the scale that we spoke about, we would create more globally competitive companies and innovate more?
I think so. I think that if the global champions you have only dominate nationally in sectors like ports, airports, mines, spectrum, they're not going to become global. It's wrong to call them global champions because they're not competing anywhere. They're only monopolizing resource within India. They are monopolizing capital within India. They are monopolizing opportunity. If that were to be expanded, the chances that we would produce goods and services that had a better chance of being able to do well globally would, I think, improve. But the focus of this government, the thinking of this government, and to be fair to them, they might be thinking this from the point of view of benefiting the country, even though it might be wrong-headed, is that we should give the Gujarati capitalists free run and make sure that they are able to develop Dharavi, they're able to do things like that. But all of them, if you notice where these companies monopolize, refining, you can't do anything with it. It stays here, is in parts that the state has a very large role. So there is a paradox here. You're trying to develop a private sector by joining it at the hip with what the government can do to help it. And I don't think that's a recipe for success. And I think secondly, in a country that's so poor, to be a global champion, you need to be able to develop things that can work in places like India where the majority of the population need things. I think that with things like airports and so on, it's totally useless. You have to make goods, products, services, housing, clothing, food that you can export and can be used by the large part of your population, education, that can better the economy, help the hundreds of millions, and can be exported into those parts of the world that don't have access to these services, Latin America, Africa, and so on. But that's not what these companies are focused on.
Interestingly, I was also having this thought about the airports, infrastructure, all these flyovers, and also Vande Bharat. If you like sort of count them in like one category of things, they're primarily services that will be used by the top, I wouldn't say even 10%, 5% of the population now. Is it that, it is also a sign of a non-democratic society, according to me, that the entire services that the government is sort of aiming for is just for these 5% privileged rich people?
If it's possible, maybe you can link it later for the Meghnad Army, but I think that they should know that there have been stories published this month, we are in August, by Scroll, that say that the number of buses running in Bombay have gone down from 5,000 to 2,000.
Yes, I saw
5,400 to 2,500, something like that.
Correct.
And that the number of people who use the metro there, which is, I think, about 1/8 of the number of people who use the local trains, is at 25% of the capacity that the state thought when they built it at great cost. Meghnad, we've got 3 airports in Bangalore. We have one in the middle of the city which is functional, which only the wealthy use, and maybe the prime minister. We've got Terminal 1, which is the new airport built at great cost. Next to it, another Terminal 2 built at great cost. There are very few footpaths on which one can walk.
Yes.
We don't have the idea of public transport because it caters to the poor, our servants and people like that. We don't really spend money on it. There's no reason for us to do so much expansive infrastructure building which only serves a very small part of the population. It's wasteful. Not only is it wasteful, in the medium term, it damages the economy because you're holding back the largest part of the population that can't access things such as airports. I had colleagues in Amnesty whose fathers worked in the bus transport companies in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, and these were stopped because the government said we don't make money on these services. Let them use the private buses instead. We don't say that about the airports. How many airports make money? And the ones that do, Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore, they are farmed out to the private sector who will charge you money to use them.
Correct.
It's just totally. It's not only is it wasteful economically, it is undemocratic.
Shouldn't the state also be trying to, well, if I mean, improve access? Let's talk about it that way, right? I know, like, I mean, I've been seeing, because of the tolls, a lot of people are being pushed out of like highways. Very random. That was so random. Then, of course, the rising prices of airfare, which is pushing out a lot of people from airplanes also. The Vande Bharat type trains which are being promoted, they are being giving priority on the tracks. Again, their tickets are higher. It almost seems like the government doesn't want the poor and I wouldn't even say poor, even the middle class to use these services anymore. This is so bizarre to me, which is like, even when you look at something like even the ethanol mixing, they don't give a shit about our engine quality anymore. Like, they just want to, well, I help Gadkari, I guess. But what do you think about that?
The argument here globally has been that if you want to access something faster, you pay more for it. The corollary is that the state is obliged to provide you the same service, maybe slightly slower, that functions.
Yes.
If you have to go to the airport in Bangalore, you have to pay 120 rupees on the toll or take an unknown road that nobody knows. You're forced to pay the toll.
Right.
And the toll has been extant since the time that the airport was built. Every time you go there, you pay a 120 rupees. It doesn't matter whether that road has been paid for fully by now, many years ago. There is no option. That's not the way a state should function. Even if you want to build a road for the rich, which is what these express tollways are, you have to make sure that similar quality is provided to those people who can't afford this.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be as wide, it doesn't have to be 8-lane and so on. But you can't just abandon the idea of what this government has done over the last 200 years and just start something only for the wealthy. What does the Vande Bharat do? Does it replace trains and make them more efficient? It does nothing other than cater to people who can pay more for the services that it offers in terms of air conditioning and legroom. That's it. Yeah. That's not the way China's got. This year it'll have 50,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. If you look at the prices at which they operate per kilometer, it's comparable to what we pay for our regular trains. You don't have to have expensive hardware to deliver quality services. And I think that that's one lesson that I don't think has been ingrained in the state here. And particularly after 2014, the focus has been on trying to make sure that most state resources are funneled towards what the wealthiest 2 or 3% of the population uses.
Correct. Last sort of section that I wanted to tackle was actually the first thing that you mentioned about a democracy. One of the features of a democracy is, of course, voting, and you get to choose your own leaders. I would not like to go into how effective the leader is, etc. But I want to bring in the Bihar SIR here and the role of the election commission, because I feel like till now, at least a few years ago, at least I had the hope that the election commission is functioning as an institution. Not maybe 100%, but at least like 80% it is there. At least it is not involved in mask rigging or manipulation. Now I'm not so sure. What does this tell you about faith in democracy? Because losing faith in election commission would also affect faith in democracy. And B, what do you think about just this Bihar SIR exercise in general?
No, I think the any exercise that is conducted with the point of view of exclusion is wrong and should not have been allowed to go forward. I'm disappointed with the fact that the justice system has let it go forward. Inclusion and not exclusion should be the principle of democracy, particularly that aspect which has to do with the vote. You're trying to deny people the vote. This is no different from nations and states that claim to be democracies but have very restricted franchise. That's one bit. The second bit is, when we think of losing faith in democracy, who are we thinking about? My view is that if you have an opposition that does not respect, that does not think that the process is fair, democracy is vitiated, and it is done irreparably. We have had a tradition for many years, and I hope it continues, that whenever there's a change in government, that you have the previous people who had power participate in the ceremonies of the oath taking.
Peaceful transfer of power.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one element of that, the grace and the dignity and the manners, goes away when the person losing, the parties losing, feel that they have been undone not because of the fact that they are unpopular, but because of the fact that the system was rigged against them. This is a story that has been told and retold across the years, across Europe, across Latin America, across Africa, across Asia. That the party that loses thinks that it has lost not because of the fact that it was unpopular, or that if it was in the opposition already, that its ideas were not valid, but because it was gamed. And that is very dangerous. And I hope that I don't see much hope of what has happened in Bihar being reversed. And in fact, I see that it will be expanded across India. But if I had a wish, if not a hope, it would be that this would pause and try and reverse itself in some way. This is very dangerous territory.
But do you think the accusations are justified? So there is one way to look at it, that the election commission is working perfectly fine, and then it is doing everything that it is supposed to do. Like this whole exclusion thing you talk about, because the election commission's argument is that, oh no, actually we are just cleaning up the voter roll. There are a lot of dead people and a lot of people who have migrated who are there, so we are cleaning it up. But whereas the opposition is constantly saying that right from the 2024 elections, if not before, and subsequent state elections, there has been manipulation done. And they have proof, which Rahul Gandhi is about to bring this Friday. I think this episode will come out a day later. What do you think about that? Is there any credibility to that?
Whenever you have a solution that has been put forward to a problem that doesn't exist, or doesn't exist to the extent that people thought it did, one should be suspicious. How many people said that the 2024 election, which the BJP won in Bihar, was because of the fact that there was bogus voting or there were false voters? No, that was not said in 2024.
No,
that's wasn't. One aspect. Second aspect is when the election commission behaves as an adversary. When it uses language against the opposition that is adversarial, the opposition has every right to say that the CI is biased, that it's rigged. That is the language of democratic politics. For a state institution to give it back to the opposition in that same language is wrong. It's like the Supreme Court and what it said about Rahul Gandhi.
Right.
That's not the way institutions are meant to behave. There should be faith within the people going to that institution, whether it's the opposition or the individual, that this is unbiased, that this is This is acting not uh, against me because of its prejudices or because of something that the government has told it to do. That's what's happened with the ECI. Because of the language they use, because of taking up issues that haven't been raised and trying to find solutions for problems that haven't been pointed out, it's very suspect, unfortunately, but that's true.
Is it because these too much democracy people have ultimately ended up in powerful positions in these institutions? They genuinely believe that democracy is holding them back. Because
That's
if you look at Amitabh Kant, I mean, not like an exactly powerful person, but also not powerful. Uh, the fact that he's saying this so openly, right? And would you say that there are more people like this in power currently?
That's one aspect. He didn't say it very openly. He said it to a bunch of people who are in the corporate sector, and they didn't expect that this would be reported and picked up on, because for them
Okay.
the language has become normalized.
Right.
But definitely that is one aspect to it. The other aspect to it is, I think, that there is a serious level of Gujarati competence that goes into how it is that the state should be run and how it is that an authoritarian majoritarian state functions. I think the way that Modi and Shah run this country is that they are relentless. There is never any time taken off to enjoy a victory or whatever. It's always, how do you control more of this country? How do you make sure that the media, the opposition, civil society is either in jail, fighting cases, not able to do its job, not able to function properly? And in this relentlessness, this is only the latest step of many that they have taken to make sure that the democracy and the constitution, which many of us assumed were a part of this society and this country, has been severely undermined.
Where does this relentlessness come from? Why are they so eager to do this?
I can't read their mind, but one element is, I think, ideological, that their adherence to Hindutva is is felt deeply. That they hate minorities. They don't like the idea of this country as being a pluralistic, open society. What they want is something that reflects the the sort of Bharat that they are taught uh, to worship, which they don't see around them,
And
and
there
their
is no
desire
way
to
to
change.
democratically achieve that? I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
there is no way to democratically achieve that vision.
It is unachievable. That's the problem. The
Hmm.
only way in which it manifests itself is the hatred of the minority. The ECIR's purpose is to exclude as many Muslims as it can from Bihar.
Hmm. Hmm.
If the objective and the goal that you set out to in government is to screw over Muslims, whether in what they eat,
Hmm.
where they vote, what they wear, where they can pray, and so on, that is all you will end up doing. I think
Hmm.
that when the memoirs are written, the failing will be that what they set out to achieve was achieved only in the very minor sense, but they were not able to change the society because the natural position of this society, the natural way in which it exists, is that of a pluralism.
Correct.
But when you step out of your home and go out onto the street, you don't see the madness which you see reflected in the mob that we see on social media. That is exceptional, but that is what they want the society to become. But it can't. It's not that easy.
So you're still optimistic.
I'm not optimistic in the sense that I hope that there will be something better. I'm pessimistic about the fact that they are not competent enough to carry out what they want to do in the larger framework. They can do it in the smaller one.
Okay, final question to you. Again, there are a lot of people who will be watching this who would have people around them who think that democracy is bad, there is too much democracy, that we need a dictator because there is too much traffic on the street and everybody who is responsible should be shot dead. That sort of thinking. Um, but I know for a fact, at least in this community, there are a lot of people who think about this, worry about this, just that they don't have any solution for it. Like how do you reduce this feeling, or how do you tackle this feeling if you see it around you? Do you have any solution for them?
I would ask them what it is that firstly I would engage with them,
Oh,
and I
you
would ask
would.
them what it is that this dictator would actually, what laws would they bring in, and could you just lay out what the framework of those laws would be? If they could make sure that people would behave in traffic, how would that happen? What is the authority that they would need to be able to ensure that people stop at the red light and don't jump it? And if that is in any way different from what we have today, I'll be very surprised. The problem is that it can't be very different. It's
How do
not
you
about how
say?
much. There is nobody in democratic politics across the world that I can think of in parliamentary democracies who's got more authority than Mr. Modi has.
Okay.
What has he achieved with all that power? If it can't be achieved with somebody with so much power, how much more power is needed, and what is that power required to do? What does it look like in practice? I think that would break down for the person who wanted a tyranny, a sort of mirror that would make them think about what it is that they were asking for.
Weirdly enough, I had this sort of argument. I engaged. Okay, I did with someone who also came from the same sort of mindset. Their argument always seems to sort of trip. I mean, when you ask something like this to them, right, which is like, what is the what do you want to see? Like, imagine a world where you have this complete power. What laws would you? And they trip up on this because they have never thought of it that way. The second thing that I found is that they always feel like they would be on the team of the dictator who ultimately comes to power. It's like they wouldn't be the one affected. They would be on the winning team, as they call it. But the third more interesting thing, which I have experienced, is that they are coming from a place of frustration where they have this idea of society which is not coming to fruition. But also they start playing victim immediately. Oh, but Modi ji is currently not in power. I mean, like, there is like this deep state Congress still in power, which is sort of controlling him, or there are bureaucracies controlling him. So Modi ji still doesn't have power. How does this work? I mean, like, you can't argue beyond a point then.
No, with this you can't argue. With this, my own view would be: I hope that he remains in power for another 25 years, and gets all of that which he doesn't have so far, and maybe that would change your mind.
And you're seeing the disappointment creep in now also. Like, I mean, I am seeing at least that
it's over. His Amera is behind us. I think that whatever, if you came into, this is Nehru in 1958, right? 11 years on, 12 years on. Nehru in 1958 is 5 years away from dying, 6 years away from dying.
Right.
Everything that we think of Nehru as being IIT, everything is behind him.
What is happening in 58?
It's the last phase. I'm saying that in the 11 years before 58, in the 2014 to 2025 period, Nehru has already completed his ISRO, IIM, IIT. All of that is done. Bhel, SAIL, all of that is done and behind him.
Okay.
Only the disappointments lie in front of him now. 62 lies in front of him. Yeah, there is all of his achievements. There's nothing else. When Obama was, I think he was the Democratic nominee, and it was clear that he would win. He went to Murdoch, to the Fox News office, where there were three of them: Roger Ailes, who used to run Fox News then, Murdoch, and Obama. So first Obama lit into, that's the word used in that report, into Ailes for being very bad with him and doing all the Muslim from Africa sort of thing. Then he spoke to Murdoch. Murdoch told him that he had met every president since, I think it was Truman in the 50s. And he said that anything that people have been able to achieve, they have done in the first 24 months. After that, they have not been able to do anything. I think that might be a good marker for what it is. When you come in with ideas, you are able, and you have the power to deploy the ideas. You don't need 10 years to do that.
Correct.
You can do that in the first 24 months. So I think that with Modi, all of whatever will be written about him would be what is behind us. There are no more new ideas. There is nothing else.
I think the last idea that he implemented was Article 370, which was in 2019.
Is that an idea? I'm saying that's been in the BJP manifesto since the 50s. I'm saying that if you skewer something, the thing that will come with it is that there was a problem in Ladakh immediately afterwards.
Right.
That violence in Kashmir did not taper off at the level at which it had before that. That there was that the Supreme Court told him that you shouldn't have removed statehood. All of that will come in. What is the solution that this offered? Did it do anything different from what was? How is the life of the average Kashmiri different in 2025 than it was in 2018? It's not different.
It's
How
not.
many fewer people on the streets of Srinagar wear a camouflage and carry guns? Well, it's the same number.
Hmm.
How is this a solution? I would say it's not a solution. I think whatever he could have done in terms of the economy, whatever in terms of foreign policy, we are seeing the failures only now because
Yeah.
it's been long enough. I can't hide after 11 years
Hmm.
because the record is too big. What I can do is say that somebody else was to blame. Soros
That's
or
what
deep
exactly
state,
they're doing now, which
Nehru's
is,
ghost.
yeah,
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 that's the.
yeah,
But the record is before us. This is Nehru in 58. That
yeah.
this everything that he wanted to achieve is behind him. Only the failures now lie in front.
So, do you think this government will survive, or will
I
it be
hope it does.
short-lived?
I think government falling is not necessarily good for the democratic principle. Also, in my view, and this might be very prejudiced because I am an upper caste, middle class, very wealthy Hindu male, and I'm really protected from all of the damage that this government can wreak. My own view, my own nasty view is that when you have mischief, you should let that mischief fully unfold. You don't
Right.
want to leave it partially. You don't want people coming later to say he should have had more time, he should have had more seats or whatever. You had two full majorities, you had 1 240, you had 15 years in power. You couldn't do it. Okay, then please don't speak about what it is that somebody like him could have done. What
Correct.
he could have done is there in front of you.
Correct.
So I hope he remains, and I don't even mind if he stays another 5 years and eclipses Nehru's record because clearly that is what he is like
In a
aiming
very
for.
weird way, you want to see the slow unraveling of what has been.
I I don't take any joy in it. I'm late on writing my next book, and
Hmm.
that's a book on the history of India after 91. I see it as a sort of departure, and
Hmm.
I was 21 in that year. So I think we came of age in a period in this country's history where we felt hope.
Yes.
That when I was 21 and when I was 30, the change in the economy was manifest. It was dynamic.
I have a
Salaries.
question for you since you're writing this book. When you were 21, uh, did you think that you would be able to buy a house? And when would you buy the house?
I came from a business family, so for me, that thought did not occur in EMI terms.
Right.
But I felt that we will like there'll be sort of enough money to be made at that point. But also, when you come from privilege, these are not things that you
Yeah.
necessarily spend time thinking about.
But if you were a 21-year-old non-privileged person, or at least like even a middle class, quote unquote, would
I
you?
think those of us one big difference which I see in my time, which is not there perhaps in your time, and the time of those people who are 21 now, is that if you were Anglophone in 1991, you you had won a lottery.
Really? Oh,
That 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 fact by itself would guarantee you the admission into the white collar world because there were so few people who had
correct.
that.
Correct.
That has changed now, but that access is gone. People of more capability, greater intellect, harder working than I am, with the same level of access that I had to education, would today not do as well
Hmm.
because it's that phase is gone. That the
Hmm.
easy, the low hanging fruit is all uh, taken up by people like us,
Hmm. Sorry, I interrupted you about your book. Please tell me more. The
which I am very late on, and I
Yeah.
hope my editor doesn't see this
Yeah.
interview. So I think that 91 was a departure in two senses of the word. That the 91-92 period, India departed in the economic sense that it said, okay, we'll try and do something which links us up with the world at large. And it did to some extent to the benefit of many people, including myself. And the second thing we did in 92 is that we departed from a, a, a pluralism in our politics, which we have not been able to return to.
Hmm.
And I think that that is playing out now. I hope it's the final phase, but I don't know if it is. But I would say 91, 92 are the two most important years in the history of India, much more than 75, 77,
Hmm.
because they represent where we will be 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Okay. I am done with my questions, and I think this has been a wonderful sort of insight into too much democracy. But as you can tell, it's not so simple. Democracy is not so simple, and unless we practice it, ourselves around us, or we even observation is important, I feel like sometimes, which is if you look around you and you see the democratic principles acting around you or not, it's a sign where we are going as a country. But as Akar said, I think, yeah, it's worthy to be optimistic. I want to like sort of clarify that again. Are you optimistic with the whole, like, whether we are going towards democracy or away from it that way?
From the point of view of politics, we are going away from democracy. From the point of view of our place in time and history, we are moving towards it. There is no way in which governments 5 years from now, 10 years from now can dominate individuals in the way that they could 15 or 20 years before that. So I think that societies, generally speaking, across the world will move towards one where the individuals have more rights and it doesn't matter who's in charge. Unfortunately, the other side of the argument is that what it is that the state does and the people who control the state. In India, the direction is negative. One can only hope that the positive impulse of society itself and the times we live in are able to overcome the negative impulses of the BJP and the state.
Okay, that's a great way to end this. Thank you so much, Akar. Anything you wanted to promote? Any book or anything that is coming
No,
out?
I wanted to congratulate you on reaching 100,000
Thank
subs.
you. Thank you.
And I think that it's important that we engage with fora like yours, because it gives the opportunity for people to respond in a way that's not possible in a traditional media like
Yeah.
newspapers or like TV. And I
Yeah,
think
I'm
it's
I'm
great.
glad like, I think at least your faith in media is restoring a little bit because of things like this.
No, we have a dog in the fight for the first time. I'm saying that for even if I were to look on myself as not being a journalist, which I am, but I'm saying that for the longest period of our history, it was what the editor told you, and you had the option of being able to say something on the letters to the editor page if they gave you that space. That's not the case anymore. We have megaphones of our own,
Yeah.
as you do,
Yeah.
and these should be used, and these should be used with people who have the right kind of view.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akar. Thank you for giving me your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah.